Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Linda Schenk and I'm the Executive Officer of Wine Communicators of Australia. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar held in conjunction with Wine Australia. Today, you'll be hearing from a cast of thousands from Wine Australia. We have Sandy, Brett, Kirsten and Ali here with us today in the office. All four presenters will be talking about different things, but in general, it's a Wine Australia update, it'll be direct-to-consumer insights, exports and tourism workshop, and wine education tools, and more. Thank you for being here with us today. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please click on the Q&A button down the bottom and type away as you think of them. We have a quick transition between each presenter, and so therefore then if you have thought of your questions, please put them in and we will answer them at the end of each presentation. So there's often a lag with questions, so if you pop them in as you think of them, it'll work really well. Look, that's enough from me, and I will now hand you over to Sandy. Thanks, Sandy.
Thanks, Linda. Yep, my name's Sandy Hathaway. I'm in the Market Insights team in Wine Australia. And today I'm going to give you a bit of a summary of the cellar door and direct-to-consumer survey that we did last year. The results were initially published in October, but have not been presented in this sort of forum before. Just by way of highlights, I mean, we reinforce that direct-to-consumer sales are a really important part of the industry, particularly for the smallest wineries. We found that nearly 90% of wineries have a cellar door, and that cellar doors account for nearly half of direct-to-consumer sales. So it's a very significant part of the industry that we haven't studied much before. What I'm going to cover today, particularly looking at some of the statistics we found and how they highlight opportunities that exist for wineries to increase their value that they're getting both from tasting and from wine clubs, and possibly how to support that through customer management systems. Before I go through that, just a little bit of background. So, as I said, Wine Australia hadn't really looked at this much before. We've always done a grape crush survey every year and a wine production survey. And the year before last, we did a specific small winemaker business survey to look at business activities, which touched on direct-to-consumer. And then last year, we were approached and asked if we would do a specific direct-to-consumer survey, which we did, and the results were presented at the first Direct Impact Conference in Adelaide. Our aims in this were, first of all, to give you, wineries, as much information as we could to help you implement best practice strategies. And as part of that, give you benchmarks. So what's the average, or what's the best in your region or in your winery size for some of the key statistics around your direct-to-consumer operations. We also had the opportunity to compare our activities with the United States, as they run a very similar survey, and they've had a sort of best practice focus on direct-to-consumer for a long time. And finally, we want to measure the change in adoption of direct-to-consumer strategies over time, which of course means we need to repeat this, because that was our first one, and certainly we intend to keep doing it for as long as we can. Okay, so looking at the results. Firstly, this shows you the breakdown of our respondents, and they largely reflect the standard population. We know that in Australia there's about 2,000 wineries, and possibly up to 1,500 of them are in these two categories. So that's more like 3/4. In our survey, we found 50% of them are in these two very small categories in terms of sales, overall sales volume, but very significant in terms of numbers. And then you can see the breakdown of the others in the sample. And then, not surprisingly, we found that direct-to-consumer revenue increases with winery size, which is why, as we know, wineries, the largest wineries contribute the most in overall volume, but in number and operation, they're quite small. So as an overall sample, we found the average direct-to-consumer revenue was about $600,000. I'm not sure if you like to think about how that compares with you, or then looking down through the ranges, you can see, not surprisingly, it goes from about 80,000 for the smallest winery size up to nearly 2 million. Now, these are averages, and I should point out it was what I would consider a fairly small sample, just under 200. We would certainly like to build that over time, and once we do that, we'll have more robust averages each year. Okay, and then this one, one of the most important ones to me is when you look at the total average, direct to consumer is only 7% of sales. And export in this group's 30%, whereas in fact we know that export is higher than that. And this is because the way the sample was structured, we really didn't capture the whole business of the very biggest wineries. So exports are a little bit understated there. But if you look particularly at this smallest group, the pink bar is the reliance on direct to consumer, and that is 68% for the smallest winery size. And because the smallest winery size accounts for about 1,000 wineries in Australia, it's very significant, not necessarily in terms of cumulative dollars, but relative to each business. And then within, I mean, direct to consumer is many things. You can see the categories we used here, cellar door, mail order, your own website, wine clubs or loyalty clubs, and events, and other things. And we had a number of suggestions for other things people were involved in. But, you know, nearly half of direct to consumer revenue comes from the cellar door. And that makes it a pretty significant channel. And it's obviously tied in very closely with tourism. So we found that the wineries we surveyed are making a very significant investment in cellar door. And we found the same in the previous year's survey of just the small winemaker survey, significant investments in cellar door activities. This slide shows you that half of the cellar doors, or over half, 62%, are open 7 days a week. And that's very significant, because that's obviously saying, you know, this is a committed business. This is not just a part-time knock on the door, and if you're lucky, someone will be there. So it means that tourists can rely on being able to come in whenever they want to. And again, even looking at the smallest size here, not surprisingly, there's fewer open 7 days, but still, you know, over a quarter are open 7 days a week, even in that very small group. And then this is some of the investments that we found. So the largest sort of other activity that cellar doors are offering is vineyard and winery tours, with half of them offering that. But if you add up the different food options, you've got 86% of cellar doors offering some form of food, whether it's internally or externally managed, cafe or restaurant, it's some form of food. This is good, this is very important because visitors expect more than just to turn up, taste some wine, buy some bottles and leave again. That's just not perhaps the modern way. However, if you look at this, although 86% of cellar doors are offering food in some form, only 28% actually offer food and wine match tasting experiences. And from the Direct Impact Conference last year and another number of other writings, you'll see that, you know, this is considered a really important trend. The growing trend in tourism is food and wine tourism. And so the opportunity to provide food and wine matching would seem to be quite significant for Australian wineries, with at the moment not much more than 1 in 4 offering that, and yet all of them, most of them having food available there on site. Another thing we found was that only 29% of the cellar doors are charging for standard tastings. And this is an interesting one that, you know, wineries will have heated conversations around the table about. It's certainly considered best practice now in America to charge for tastings. That standard tastings, if charged for, are likely to increase the value assigned to that tasting. Maybe you won't get quite as many people tasting, but you get a better value of quality of taster, I suppose, and a better outcome. So of those 29% who do charge, and I might just note that it's 29% overall, and in fact it's the smallest ones that are having a higher rate of charging, whereas the largest wineries are the least likely to charge for tastings, which is interesting. But how much are they charging? And I wonder if you could just think for a minute, what do you charge, or what do you think an average charging fee would be, and just perhaps write a number down. There's obviously no test on this, but just give yourself a minute to think about it. You might think there'd be some range. In the Napa, the range apparently in 2018 is $20 to $100. And for that, there's a set number of wines. So you might pay for 5 whites or 5 reds or a vertical tasting or something like that. It's not just a per person fee. But here we found that the range of fees was very small and the fees were very low. So basically over half charged $5, another third charged $10, and only maybe 1 in 10 charged any different amount. And of the 29%, almost all of those would reimburse the fees. So only 15% don't reimburse the fees at all, the others do. And as you can see, most of them reimburse the fee based on a minimum number of bottles. Rather than a purchase amount, a minimum number of bottles. We didn't ask how many that was. And only 4% on joining the wine club. Now, these are small numbers because we're only down to 47 wineries who have a cellar door and charge a fee. But again, perhaps ask yourself, what do you think is the best means of reimbursement? And a lot of people would say minimum number of bottles because you guarantee yourself a purchase, or maybe a minimum purchase amount, which would at least seem to guarantee you a certain profit margin. But I'd like to suggest that it isn't either of those options. Just looking at this next slide, we found that 3/4 of visitors purchased wine at the cellar door anyway. I mean, we didn't separate out those who charged fees with those who didn't, but 3/4 of people purchased wine anyway. That's the main reason they've come to a cellar door. So reimbursing the fee based on a purchase is probably not going to make much difference to the purchase behaviour. And then looking at the next one, let's look at the number of visitors we've got. This is interesting too. And this was, I don't know if this is an anomaly, whether we'll find the same this year, but I found it kind of interesting that you could, as a rule of thumb, say that if you had produced around 1,000 cases, you had around 1,000 annual visitors. And if you produce between 5 and 20,000 cases, you might get between 5 and 20,000 visitors. We found 11 as an average. And the largest, 50,000 plus, they had 48,000 visitors. So it did seem to work fairly well. My colleagues are nodding here to see how this lines up with the growing wine tourism workshops. But it bothers me a little bit because if you're a small winery, you've got a cellar door and you're open full time, so you've got staff to pay. If you're a very small winery, you've got the same constraints, you've got the same size business, in terms of a facility, a footprint, a number of staff, and yet you're getting half the number of visitors. So it's something that probably is a structural issue that could be looked at. But just coming back to that question of reimbursement, the problem with visitors to your cellar door in terms of your direct-to-consumer reliance is that they've got to come to your cellar door, which means you're constrained by a number of different things, whether it's how far your region is from a capital city, what international tourism numbers are doing, what the price of petrol is, how good the accommodation is in your region, what the competitive strategies are in other regions. So there's a lot of factors that are not really within your control. However, if you look at something like a wine club, that's an area where you can then really build on your cellar door visitors and offer them an ongoing access to your wines. I'm just going to put this, now this next slide, I just need to make a point first, which is that we found that only 60% of wineries had a wine or a loyalty club. So a bit over half. This slide is the next step, which says of the ones who have them, 78% have a wine club and 10% have a loyalty club and 12% have a combination of both. But what do you think the value of a wine club member would be? And again, maybe you know this information, perhaps you could just write it down if you know the value of a wine club member to you. Maybe you don't have a wine club, maybe you're thinking about it. But I'll just ask you to think about that. This is what we found. I'm concerned that the numbers are small because we only had you know, 60% of the wineries who have a wine club, when we then break it down into size categories, they're small. But still, if you look at, let's say this very small, or let's go with the small group here, there's 30 in the group. The annual commitment that they require of their wine club members is $429. And the average additional spend was another $132. So clearly these wine club members, they're spending more than the commitment, and they're spending on average, what's that, nearly $600 per year. That I would put to you is probably more than the amount that they spent at the cellar door on that one-off occasion that they visited and got a reimbursement for their tasting fee. So if, and I'm going to be adventurous here and try and go backwards, if instead of making your reimbursement contingent on a purchase, if you made it contingent on them joining your wine club, you might expect that over time, the value of that would be much greater to you. And there's obviously a lot around that. It's not simple, but it's food for thought. So I'm going to come back down to where I was. This was another thing we thought. There's options to get more out of wine clubs. If you look at this, what options do you offer your members? So about half of the wineries who have wine clubs have set packs, and about half offer full user choice. If you're in the set pack half, maybe you could consider moving towards full user choice. Again, that's considered best practice now, and particularly with the younger generations coming through, it is absolutely what they expect. And really, even moving from a wine club to a loyalty club, where you're really looking at, there aren't these packs just sent to you. You get to choose exactly what you want, and you earn points using, you know, whenever you buy, whatever you buy. And then the other one we found was, do you offer a tiered membership program? And again, more than half do not offer a tiered membership program, which again, we think is an opportunity, because a tiered membership program really allows you to capitalize on your high spending, really loyal members by offering them something more special, rewarding them. And if you're thinking this is all very well, it is complicated to run a wine club properly, a wine or a loyalty club properly, to invite people to join a wine club when they visit you. All these things will require a lot of data collection and management. And that's, you know, that's a significant investment. We asked the wineries in our survey what they use to maintain customer records. And this question we're going to have to improve on this year, because we did find we didn't get really good answers. For instance, people might say they used a CRM, but in fact, when we asked them what CRM, they said Excel or MYOB or something. And so we need to make clearer what we mean in our question. But we did find that only 13% are using basically a dedicated CRM system that would help you manage ongoing contact with your members, club membership, tracking data, tracking average value, all those sorts of things. So again, as a little bit of food for thought, that's something that I think wineries in Australia could usefully build on. Now, just quickly, I'm just going to put up these two profiles. So this is what I meant by benchmarking, and this is in our report, so don't feel you need to write it down, and I know you'll have access to the slides as well, but this is the average that we found for the wineries in that below 1,000 case group. So I'm not going to run through all the stats, but the important one to me, 68% of sales direct to consumer. And if you then look at the stats in terms of who's charging for a standard tasting, whether your cellar door's open 7 days a week, how often you contact customers, things like that. Those are benchmarks that you can personally assess your business against and see whether you think you're doing better or have got room to improve there. And then this is another profile, and I chose a couple of extremes. So this is a much bigger size. 17% are direct to consumer. The bigger you get, the more you rely on wholesalers and exports. Again, almost everyone is now open 7 days a week, and they're getting more visitors, and 80% this time are contacting customers at least quarterly. So these are good stats for businesses in Australia at this size and how they're managing their DTC. So just by way of summary, as a takeaway, I hope, you know, I know not everyone in the audience is probably a winery, but a small winery even, but if you are, maybe compare your winery with the statistics for your size category, and I'll show you in a minute where you can get the report. You can have a think about your tasting options and your wine club options. Can you combine them with food? Can you collect perhaps email addresses for wine club membership instead of reimbursing on a bottle? Can you look at investing in collecting customer data? And finally, you know, look at how you're collecting data and how you can measure change over time. So just to finish off then, our report is available on our website. It's free to everybody. And I hope that you'll support this year's survey when it comes out. The better data we have, the better results you'll have, because we hope to be able to analyse not only by winery size, but by region. You might like to sign up to our weekly market bulletin just to keep up. That way you'll get things like, you know, little articles on new reports as soon as they're released. And I should also note that we will be presenting the results of our 2019 survey at the Direct Impact Conference in Orange in September, and hope to release the report around the same time, just depending on how the timing of the survey goes. And that's it. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Sandy. Actually, Sandy, before you run away, we have a few questions here. The first one being, what is the difference between a wine club and a loyalty club?
Okay, and yeah, we probably didn't clearly define that. Probably people think of it in different ways, but in principle, to me, it's that wine club provides set packs that are sent out to you. You may be able to modify them, but essentially you get sent a certain number of packs per year and you commit to that. Whereas a loyalty club just says you accumulate points like your frequent flyer. Every time you buy wine, you accumulate points, and then your points give you perhaps discounts or special events. So the full user choice wine club should be indistinguishable from a well-run loyalty club.
Excellent, thank you. The other question is food, and you mentioned food and wine matching. How is this done?
Well, I'm not a cellar door operator, so that's a tricky one for me. But I think in a number of ways you'd be talking about, you know, I think you could do it in a number of different ways, but in principle, you're talking about, instead of just saying, here are some wines to taste, you might be saying, taste these wines with this food from our menu. Or if you're eating in our restaurant, we recommend this wine goes with this one, but it might be that it's a tasting glass instead of you have to buy a bottle.
Yep.
It would be tasting. So I would think people would structure that in different ways. But yeah, that would be my first thought.
Excellent. And another question, do you have any Australia-specific data around how charging for tastings is affecting spending at cellar door?
Really good question. Short answer, no, we don't. In the US, they have certainly shown fewer people, but better conversion to purchase, in a nutshell. If the person who's asked that question would like more information, please feel free to send a direct email to us, that marketinsights@wineaustralia.com, and we will provide as many stats as we can in answer to any questions along those lines.
Excellent, great. Thanks so much, Sandy. Really great that people are putting questions through as they're thinking of them. It's really helps with the process. I'm now going to hand the microphone over to Brett, who is going to tell us what he's about to talk about. Because I've gotten confused.
Hello everybody, Brett Murphy here. I'm Wine Australia's General Manager for the Export and Regional Wine Support Package, and what I'm going to talk to you about is our growing wine exports and growing wine tourism education programs. I guess the main message for today is that both programs are open for registration, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what you get if you come along to those programs, and how to register for them and when and where they're being held. Overall, the design of both programs has been very intentionally put together to be as practical, hands-on and wine-specific as they can possibly be. They are full of practical examples and tools and information, and I guess all tailored specifically to be wine industry focused. And there's something there for everybody, basically. So if you are a long-time exporter or have got a well-developed wine tourism offering, our feedback from those that have been through the program in 2018 is that it was still well worth their while. And for those that are fairly new or brand new or fairly inexperienced, I think my favourite piece of feedback so far is that from one producer who attended and said basically that what they learnt in 2 days would have taken them months and months and months of their own time to be able to do all of the research and develop the same sets of tools. So really worthwhile coming along. I'll start with growing wine tourism. The program has been developed by Wine Australia in partnership with the Australian Tourism Export Council, Fast Track Asian Solutions and Wine Tourism Australia. And the facilitators come from ATEC Fast Track and from Wine Tourism Australia. So again, it was very much intentional to be able to bring that combination of tourism, cultural and wine to get wine expertise together as part of the development and the delivery of the program. There are 3 modules that make up growing wine tourism, 1, 2 and 3 that you can see on the screen there. And in essence, module 1 is the laying the foundations. So it's basically a lot of the terminology and data information profiling, and specifically around that inbound tourism, so international tourists being the focus. I guess there's plenty that you get out of the program from a domestic tourism offering as well. Obviously there's overlap between the two, but the specific focus of the program is on inbound international tourists. So the second part of module 1 takes you through your unique value proposition to capture the inbound tourism market. And that's a piece that then actually continues to flow through and evolve as you go through modules 2 and 3 as well. Module 2 then goes into the specifics of creating a great wine tourism experience. Talks about the different ways of going about that, the different types of wine tourism experience, and how to design the right experience that fits your business and the market and the profile of the visitors that you're wanting to attract. It goes then through into the second part and looks at how you map your visitor journey, so how they engage with you from looking for the experience, registering for the experience, participating in the experience, and keeping in touch post the experience, and how to select the right target markets to fit your business. And then finally, as we go into module 3, that's where we look at the more at the sales side, the distribution of your offering, and pricing for profit, and really very much sort of that sort of detailed financial promotional understanding how the pricing systems work when you're actually looking to sell your tourism experience through the different channels that are out there for you to select from. So with all of that said, there's then multiple ways that you can participate in growing wine tourism. Option 1 is to attend the face-to-face version, which is 2-day regional workshop, and you will cover all 3 modules across the 2 days. All of the course content side of it is basically done in the first day and a half, and then the afternoon of the second day is some practical working with the facilitators and working with the tools to actually start to be able to flesh out your wine tourism plan and to practice your unique value proposition and sales pitches in a friendly environment with your peers and the facilitators going through the program. The The other option is to go through the 90-minute webinars. So they basically go through half a module at a time. So the first webinar, module 1, part 1, second webinar, module 1, part 2, and so forth. And so you end up attending 6 90-minute webinars over the course to be able to complete the full program. Both options are heavily subsidised by the Export and Regional Wine Support Package. So just to give you a quick feel for the sorts of things and the tools that you get to see, we focus heavily on the Chinese and the US markets, so a lot of demographic and social profiling type information around the Chinese consumer and how to tailor your offering specifically for the Chinese traveller. Lots of access to tourism data, statistics, market profiling, and so forth. And then you get into some of the tools for how to go about pricing. And I think this is where it's really pertinent, linking back to Sandy's presentation earlier, and where she was talking about your cellar door offering and matching the food and wine experiences and different sizes of business, actually being able to go, well, what are the different factors that make it up? What's it going to cost me to actually offer this experience? And therefore, what sort of charging do I need to do? Is it actually going to be a profitable line of business for me, or is it something that I'm willing to be as a lost leader type offering to actually bring people into the winery, because ultimately my main goal is to sell wine. Tool here for how you can use an occasion-focused design approach to developing your wine tourism experience, and the commission rates by distributor, so you actually understand where, as you go through the various tiers in the distribution channels, what sort of markups there are and how you need to factor those into your pricing. So if you're interested in growing wine tourism, you can register now, and basically the way that you do that is to go through the Wine Australia website, go to the What's Happening menu that you can see at the top of the screen there, and then select Growing Wine Exports and Growing Wine Tourism from the drop-down menu, and that will take you to the pages where you can see all of the following dates and locations for the webinars and the regions. I won't go through all of those, obviously, but I'll just leave them on the screen for a sec so you can have a look and try and find your nearest location or when the webinars are on. As you can maybe tell there, the part 2 of module 1 webinar is actually taking place right now. And we start the in-region 2-day workshops on the 25th and 26th of March with the Hunter. So on to Growing Wine Exports, the second part of our education offering through the capability building program of the $50 million package. Again, it's intended for all ranges of exporting experience and size and expertise. This one we deliver in partnership with Hydra Consulting. There are again several paths that you can take through Growing Wine Exports. The face-to-face offerings start with a 1-day export ready session, and then that flows into a 2-day export plan workshop. It's not mandatory to attend the 1-day session before you go to the 2-day workshops, but I guess our strong recommendation is that you do. You'll definitely have a better experience overall if you attend the 1-day first, and then build up to the 2-day export plan workshops. For the 1-day version, there is also an online learning option for that. So you can take that one through our OpenShoot tool, and there's lots of video snippets and the facilitators. You can basically go through that self-paced, but the facilitators, through a series of videos and so forth, effectively talk you through each of the sections of the 1-day session. Now, again, it's delivered by people with experience, practical experience, either running their own wineries or running businesses that support wine producers in market. In terms of what you get with growing wine exports, again, lots of case studies, tips and tricks, lots of access to market data that's either gathered by Wine Australia or that we purchase from our own external sources. Lots of tools. If you attend the 2-day export plan, you get a live video hookup with our USA team in market from Damon Musher, who heads up our market entry program in the US for wineries that are looking to gain distribution in the US for the first time, as well as a Chinese dining experience and lots of role play for Chinese business meeting and dinner scenarios, which are those that you'll experience in market over there. Again, just a quick look at some of the tools. So this is the export plan that you start with from the 1-day session. Looking at how your brand reputation and awareness impacts your export story. Building up bottom-up costings for your export pricing, FOB calculator to be able to take a look at how your FOB price will translate through to a retail price in various markets. And again, registration through the Wine Australia website. Go to that What's Happening menu and click on the Growing Wine Exports and Growing Wine Tourism link. Here's the locations for the 1-day export ready sessions and 2-day workshops. You also register for the online session from the same location from the Wine Australia website. And when you do that one, you'll get a user account created in the online learning system with an email telling you how to log in and so forth. So yeah, again, you can take in those dates and in your own time take a look at this presentation or go onto the website and have a look at those again. And the only thing I will just quickly point out here is that 29th of March session in the Riverland has actually been cancelled due to lack of numbers for that particular session, but Griffith and Mildura are both definitely going ahead. So I'm about to hand over to Kirsten Hannon to talk to you about our Market Explorer tool. The one just final thing I will say, and I guess take questions at this point as well. So Kirsten's about to take you through Market Explorer. If you do attend the Growing Wine Export 1-day sessions or 2-day workshops, the facilitators will be using this tool live and very actively right throughout the workshops this year. And that will also be an opportunity to be able to get some some face-to-face training, I guess, in in how to use the Market Explorer tool in more depth. So yeah, just yet another reason to register for those sessions.
Excellent, thank you, Brett. Whilst we hand over to Kirsten, there's no questions come through, so you must have just done such an awesome job.
All the information that was needed,
everyone,
fantastic.
But certainly people can go on the website and find that information, and I'm sure that they can contact you as well.
Of course, yes, absolutely. I think the contact details hopefully were on that first slide. If not, you'll find them easily in the Export and Regional Wine Support Package part of the website. Excellent,
thank you, Brett.
Thanks, Linda.
Let's swap chairs and put Kirsten on.
Hi everyone, I'm also, like Sandy, in the Market Insights team, and we'll be going through the Market Explorer, which is a brand new tool that we launched last week after several months in development. But this is based on feedback that we've collected over at least 2 years. Basically, as Brett was alluding to, the feedback that he got from the Growing Wine Exports was that by providing all of this information, people were able to shorten the amount of time that they needed for research and development and whatnot to help them actually get out and export. So the feedback we got from a Market Insights perspective was that people didn't know where to look for data, they didn't have the money to purchase the data, they didn't have the resources available to be able to get in there and understand what the data was saying. So they basically, you know, and I've been told this in some instances, work on gut feeling. So we really wanted to build the capability of potential and current exporters by pulling information from a number of different sources together to make it a lot easier for people to make decisions based on data. So that's where the Market Explorer came about, and thanks to the $50 million package, we were able to build a wonderful web app that was able to showcase all of this information. When we developed the tool, we really had sort of different personas in mind. So people who had no idea where to start looking, all the way through to people who were much more experienced with playing with data and wanted to get a bit deeper into the information. So you can find the Market Explorer through the Wine Australia website simply by searching on Market Insights and then under Tools, the Market Insights Tools page. Oh, yes, thank you. Oh, there we go. It's already circled. And that is the web link there, the URL. This is just an image of the landing page, but today I'm going to actually just sort of give you a quick look and feel, rundown of how it feels when you're using the tool. Oh, back. Just bear with me one moment. So as you saw before in that image, this is the welcome to Market Explorer. This is our landing page. I'll just give you an idea, sort of a navigation point of view. We have our home icon. We have a section of reports called Explore Markets. We have a market summary, which provides a one-page sort of report on each of the markets. We have a market list, and I'll quickly demonstrate that as well. A market comparison, which gives you an opportunity to compare some selected markets as well. New products and new markets, which these are these are designed for those people who really want to get into the nitty gritty, and these are all based on our export data. But if you come to our landing page, some of the really common questions we get asked at Market Insights is, you know, which markets drink the most wine? Which markets consume the most imported wine? These are very common questions. So we thought we build the tool to sort of really cater and get people in from an easy perspective. So if I went to click on which markets drink the most wine, we're now in the Explore Markets tab, and we'll wait for it to load. These are actually Power BI reports. You may find that depending on your bandwidth, they can be a bit slow, but please be patient if that is the case for you, but it is definitely worthwhile. So for this particular report here on the left, we have a map showing bubble sizes in numerous different countries. If you just scroll down here, you'll see a legend which shows that sort of the markets with the lower amounts are in the blue, and the markets that have the higher volume are in the red in this instance. So you can quickly get a really good glance at which markets can drink the most wine. So definitely the US, and over here in China and the UK. So you can really quickly visualize that. If you hover over each of these markets as well, you'll get a number of different little pieces of information when they load. Not loading right now, but definitely there. Over on the right, we've got a table here which ranks the markets, in this instance based on the value, so from the largest to the smallest. So you can see the United States, France, China, UK and Italy are the largest consumers in terms of value of wine. And up here we have some information from Wine Intelligence, which tells you the wine drinking population. So United States is 84 million drinkers of wine, but the number of drinkers of Australian wine in the US is 18 million. I can actually refine my search as well. So if I click on the United States of America, it'll refine the map, but it'll also refine the information within the tool. So it'll only show me the information on the United States. If I wanted to reverse that, I would simply just click back on the table on that market. if you need some information, if you click on that little, oh, that's not going to work today. There we go. There's a little information here to sort of talk about how the tool is interactive between the graphs and the tables and the maps. So at the moment, the default time here is 2017. We're looking at value. The report period is for the full year of 2017, but I can actually modify that. So if I wanted to look at volume, I can simply just change that through the filters at the top of the web app. And it quickly just shows me in 9-litre cases the quantity of wine consumed. Let's say I want to look at where there's been any growth. So I can look at the short-term growth based on volume. And we can see that the countries that are off a lower base generally have a higher change. But we can also continue to sort of find, if we're interested in places like Thailand, you can still see that they've got a large amount of volume and they've had a 2.2% increase year on year. So let's say you're in your business and you want to be a pioneer and you only want to go to markets with a low share of Australian wine, low consumption of Australian wine. So I've just clicked here to market list and it's brought up all of the markets here that have come through from our data sources. And you can see in this here, we've got consumption. So this is the data that comes from the IWSR. We can see Australia's share of that imported consumption. And then we've got the imported consumption and then the short-term growth, which is year over year, long-term growth, which is a 5-year compound average annual growth rate. And then we've got the exports as well in short and long-term growth. So if I wanted to look at markets which had a low share of imported consumption of Australian wine, I can go to the heading here and there's a little drop-down icon that I pressed. So right now it's just ranked them from highest to lowest. So if I click it again, I'll actually get lowest to highest. You'll see that there's a number of markets here that don't drink Australian wine, but now all of a sudden I've got a number of markets. So France, not big consumers of Australian wine. Chile, the same. Brazil, the same. So, you know, these are some markets that I might be considering. So, so let's say I narrow those down. So I'm interested in France, I'm interested in Chile, and I'm interested in Brazil. So now we can go into our market comparison report. Wait for it to load. There's a lot of information here, so please be patient. So it was Chile, Brazil, and I can't remember the last. France, thank you. So now I've got a lot more information about these 3 markets right at my fingertips, pulling in data from the IWSR, our export data. So this is the IWSR data here, all about consumption. Then I've got our export data in here as well, in terms of volume, value, growth, whether it's premium wine. Then we've got top exports by variety. Then we've got information here about market access. So this information has come to us from our in-market representatives and also our market access team within Wine Australia. We did quite a lot of analysis on each of those markets, and there's a really synopsis of the full gamut of information that's available on the market export guides, which we also have on the Wine Australia website. So people might want to know, is there a free trade agreement? Well, there's definitely one in Chile. The tariffs, you know, are they low, high? So we've got categories here. Labeling, whether there's national requirements or there aren't. So there's quite a lot of detail here. And then we have some market characteristics, some of that standard population and economic information that you may be interested in when you're comparing those markets. So let's say you're interested in Chile now because we actually have a free trade agreement. So, and you want to go to your board with this information. So you can actually go into the market summary now. And type in Chile. And it'll load again. Taking a while. So now we actually have a one-page market summary report of Chile, which you can print off and take with you when you're on the road or if you wanted to present to your board. I've just been told that I've run out of time. So basically this tool is here to help you make well-researched decisions. There are two other areas on this tool that are very useful that provide our export data, but I don't have time. So these will be showcased within the Growing Wine Exports workshops. So you will have an opportunity to use them to their fullest extent. And I encourage you all to turn up and or even just get online right now and access this tool and start playing around with it.
Just a couple of quick questions, thank you.
Yep.
One is the tool available to everybody?
Everyone.
Great, fantastic. The other question is, does Wine Australia have data over a period by variety? For example, the growth of, say, Chardonnay and Prosecco in China or other markets?
So yes, we do in these new products.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so you'll just have to go in and play with that. I didn't get a chance.
No, it's okay. And there's certainly a lot to get through.
Yes.
And I think it's something that would be great for people to go and play with. The other comment is actually a compliment to say, well done, great tool. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So what we will do now is pass over to Ali Lockwood, our final presenter for the day. So bear with us. It's we're nearly to the end, but certainly some fantastic information coming through. I think you would all agree.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's like musical chairs at this end, but I promise you I'm the very last presenter. My name's Ali Lockwood, as Linda mentioned. I'm the Manager of Stakeholder Engagement, and I'm here to talk about another tool which has been developed for exporters and Australian wine producers, which is called Australian Wine Made Our Way. So I guess this is a really exciting program which we'll be sharing with you today. The most important point is this is a freely accessible education program, which we believe is one of the only of its kind globally. It was launched at the end of January at the Australia Trade Tastings in London, Dublin and Edinburgh. And within 2 weeks, there was more than 6,000 downloads. So it's become very popular very, very quickly. So it's really content-rich, open access, modern education program, and it really sets Australian wine apart from its competition. It's quite innovative and creative, and it really redefines the benchmark for global wine education. So wine education has traditionally been considered an elite and exclusive channel, with accreditation playing a critical role. But what this often fails to meet is the demands of an industry and a consumer that's thirsty for information and expect to access everything at a click of a button. So as you'll see today, this program really throws that whole formal education program concept out the window. It offers unrestricted access and complete flexibility. Importantly, this program is not just for wine schools and educators, although wine schools and educators are more than welcome to use this content. It's more than that, and it's something that all of you can use. It's a training tool, a sales and marketing tool. It's for your importers, it's for all exporters, it's for retailers, wineries, hospitality teams, and more. So Australian Wine Discovered is a comprehensive education program. It provides free information packs, tools and resources to discover and share Australian wine. We've called it an education program, but it's certainly doesn't mean it's designed to be worked through as a guided curriculum. There's no accreditation, no restriction, and certainly no restrictions on its use. The assets are flexible and editable, so you can take it and tailor it wherever you need and whatever your audience might be. So there's 22 different programs covering all sorts of topics, Australian wine regions and varieties, as well as themes such as sustainable viticulture and winemaking and Australia's old vineyards. So the Foundations of Australian Wine is a great place to start, particularly for international importers and trade. It's a real cheat sheet about Australian wine. An introduction to wine takes you through the basics of how wine's made and how to taste, and questions such as wine faults, etc. But probably from my perspective, the most important thing is that you can mix and match these slides. You're really not limited to present one entire deck. You can cut and paste the slides and mix it as you see fit. So for example, if you're presenting on Australia's old vines, you could drop in some slides on Shiraz, and you could drop in some slides on Barossa as well. As you can see, it's not your typical black and white wine textbook. It's really diverse and creative content. It's really visual storytelling using illustrations, a lot of videos and imagery as well too. So it's very Instagrammable content. It's designed for beginners right through to advanced, depending on what your requirements are. We've had a really rigorous process to develop this content, and it's been supported by the $50 million package. So a real legacy of what that investment has provided. At any one time, we've had more than 10 industry experts working on these programs. So that includes writers and sub-editors. We've had masters of wine working on this, wine educators, videographers, designers, and more. So all up, we've got over 1,000 PowerPoint slides, which is a tool there for you to access at any time. Now, the great thing about this is it's all downloadable, the materials. We've got more than 200 different assets that you can download. So that's PowerPoint, imagery, videos, etc. We have detailed guides, which includes an editable PowerPoint presentation, which you can tailor, handout versions of the presentation for note-taking, and looped videos as well, which you can play in the background if it's at an event. We've also got a lot of other tools such as attendance certificates, templates, editable tasting maps, sheets and lists. And soon there'll be ebooks. We've done the first ebook recently for McLaren Vale, but we'll be adding to that and including that on our consumer website. We'll also be including content in Chinese, and some content will be in Japanese as well. So all of this content is available literally at the click of a button, and it's all there for you to access and utilise. You don't need to sign in, you don't need to join, you do not need to be an accredited educator. You just go to australianwinediscovered.com and use the filters to find exactly what you're after. So remember, the files are editable, which means if you've got an importer internationally who wants to drop their own logo in or put in their own wines in their own portfolio, they can do that. And it's not just for educators, it is for education across the board, whether it's salespeople, floor staff, cellar door teams, reps, wait staff, bar managers, importers, etc. I've got a short video which I'll play for you on what Australian Wine Discovered offers. So as you can see, it's a fantastic resource. I'd really encourage you to jump online and have a look and have a experiment yourself and have a play with all the content, more than 200 downloadable assets there for the Australian wine sector to tap into. So thank you, everybody. And
Questions?
Linda.
There is a question here, Ali, and if anyone else has got any questions, please shoot them through. Will these programs be rolled out to include more regions?
Not in the short term, no. So it's incredibly expensive exercise to pull this together, and it has been supported by the $50 million package. And we have covered the key regions that are exported, so no, not in the short term.
There's a lovely compliment here saying, beautiful tool, well done. On that note, if anyone's frantically typing away, I will ask the question. Otherwise, I will say thank you very much to the Wine Australian team. Did an extraordinary job to do four presenters, I beg your pardon, in an hour with so much content. That was just exceptional. Well done. Thank you also to Wine Australia for the support of the ongoing support of the industry. Seriously, these tools are just amazing, and how lucky are we in the Australian wine industry to have such great tools available to us all. That's it from me. Thank you so much for everybody who attended today. Our next presentation will be actually from the University of Southern Queensland, who'll be talking about vineyards of the future and the marketing and communications of said vineyard. So please join us again then. Other than that, have a fantastic week, and thanks again, guys, for coming in.
Thanks, Linda.
You're welcome.